Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Brear, and welcome to episode 27 of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show, brought to you this morning by our good friends over at MyTech, who provide tomorrow's identity verification for today's uncertainty. And uncertainty we surely have right now, don't we? So in this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday straight into your homes at 8:30 BST here and live on LinkedIn. If you're picking this up over on Twitter right now, I'd pretty much recommend that you head straight over to LinkedIn, as we're going to be answering questions live on the show. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, you missed all the fun. Come and get involved live. It's 8:30 BST every morning over on my LinkedIn. So make sure you add me on LinkedIn, connect. I'll connect to anybody at this stage in terms of getting these things going and getting where we're getting. Today, we're really pleased to be joined by Dhaval Gore, who is the head of financial, business services and technology. That is a long business card that he has right there at London Partners. How's it going, Dhaval? How are you doing?
Very good, sir. How are you, David?
Yeah,
it is
really
a long
good.
job title. Apologies.
It is. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have big pockets for those business cards. Today, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about how coronavirus is affecting London's businesses, and particularly focusing down on the fintech scene and how the city could look on the other side of this. As always, guys, hit us up with any questions or any comments that you've got over on LinkedIn. We'll pick those up. We'll weave them in. Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, Dhaval, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do and your background? Because I mean, I know you've had quite an interesting background before London and Partners, and then get into a little bit about what London Partners does and what your objectives is.
Yeah, no. So I lead on the agency's work, future planning on key sectors such as fintech and cyber. And blockchain as well. So specifically working across all lines of the business that's involved in promoting and engaging these sectors and communities. My day job, I've got two hats actually. My day job is also working on the scale-up program that we run at London Partners called the Mayor's International Business Program, which supports London-based tech firms with their international growth plans. 11FS is a recent joiner, which is awesome. My background is pretty much in the same space. I've kind of dotted around supporting in the last 10 years London tech firms, foreign tech firms with their international growth plans and internationalization. I've worked for New Zealand government. I've worked for consultancy firms such as PA Consulting. I've worked for UK government. And so my passion is always trying to help the SME community, particularly those guys those guys and girls who've got global ambitions in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had lots of conversations. I mean, Rajesh Agarwal we've had on FinTech Insider podcast before. I mean, we've had lots of conversations around how, I mean, London has created such a great magnet for talent when it comes to what's happened within fintech. I mean, London Partners plays a major part in bringing that community together, doesn't it? I mean, I've been to many events that you guys have had that really pulls the groups together. And I think that community is what makes London so unique, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I think spot on. It's that what's the economic term, agglomeration. You know, it's that the convening, the butting up against each other, the juxtaposition, and not from a domestic, not with a domestic flavor by any means. It's very international. You know, I think there's something where close to 50% of people who live and work in London have some connection with overseas territories. So it's yeah, we'd like to think we're conveners such as yourselves. You know, we're very much part of the community, and you know, in very much we kind of see ourselves as independent brokers, bringing the community together, bringing the right minds together, and hopefully something comes off the back of that, and we spark some new ideas and new business models perhaps.
Agree. Loads and loads of people joining us this morning. Sad to say, in a lot of the comments, it sounds like a pretty soggy world out there right now. So Peter over in St. Albans says, hey, Zara, Ed. I mean, we've got people, Raul joining us from India. I mean, I'm hoping, Raul, the weather is still good over there. That we can always guarantee on that, I guess. Josie over in Malta. We've got Gafford. Gafford, I mean, I'm presuming that's a Welsh name. I don't want to presume you're still over in Wales, but let me know where you're at in the comments. Morning, Janet. How you doing? Janet, saying, "Good morning, it's East London in it." Janet, I know you wouldn't say that in the real world, would you? But yeah, some loads and loads of people. I mean, again, if you've got any questions for Dhaval as we go through this, then hit him up in the comments, and I'll keep gathering them in. I mean, how have you managed to? Obviously, I mean, we haven't said coronavirus yet. I mean, what do we get? 5 minutes into this without saying coronavirus, but I mean, how has it affected you guys? Because I mean, you are a pretty close-knit team in terms of working closely together and going to a fully remote setup. I mean, how have you found that within London and Partners working remotely?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, David. The vast majority of the work that we do and the activities that we run is very much in person, right? I mean, yes, we've had the tools to work remotely, and credit to the company. For many years, we've had a flexible remote working policy and the hardware to facilitate that. Operationally, it's been fairly seamless. I think with most of the organizations we work with, including yourselves, I'm sure, where we've gone remote working. We've got the setup at home. We've got the laptops and the broadband, and we've signed up to Teams and Zoom, etc., which is great. But it's been a challenge. I mean, everything that we've had in the roadmap in terms of activities, we've shifted to digital. Again, like lots of people and organizations around the world, and we're learning as to what works, what doesn't work. We're quickly learning how to use Zoom as well in the various features and options. I wasn't aware that it had so many features and options, which is great, but we're having to really pick up the speed as to how best to utilize that tool. For some of the sessions that we're planning to roll out for the next couple of months, some of them are quite ambitious, particularly around virtual trade missions. That's a new one. I'll explain that later, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds super interesting how you then digitally, virtually sort of build those bridges. I mean, maybe if we start with how this is affecting London, because I mean, obviously everything in the UK and people outside of London don't always like this, but everything in the UK does revolve around London. Not because I think necessarily that is a master plan necessarily, but the gravity of opportunity and talent and everything that's there always revolves around the biggest city in a country, and that is London for us. And as you say, it is such a diverse melting pot of ideas and opinions and directions and talents. But in this period, it seems like actually people are really pulling together. I've been absolutely amazed at the amount of initiatives that are coming through. We had Mike Kelly on the show. I know you've been talking to Mike, but a lot of people are really pushing out of their way to put their own personal problems aside with everything that's happening and try and solve millions of people's problems, which I mean, I feel just shows how strong the London ecosystem really is,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been just fantastic and marvelous to observe how the community, not just in the fintech community, the tech community, and the general business community have come together and working alongside each other to deliver some useful tools, some kind of some meaningful tools to help NHS workers, to help the small business community, to help individuals. You guys have been working on things like COVID credits, Save My Local with Mike, things like Lightning Aid. Interestingly, one of the companies that we've been supporting in the program, a company called Credit Enable, they're offering free health checks for the small business community, not here, but in India, actually. They've set up an operation in India. They're helping the 70 million SMEs, particularly at the small end, to better access to credit and speeding up that process. So there's a real strong goodwill happening in London, in the UK, and across the world. And what's really heartening is how companies are teaching each other as to what works and what doesn't work, and reaching out to their friends in different parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like competition sort of goes out of the window a little bit in the community. People are happy to share ideas openly and for the best of the community, essentially, isn't it? Which is great. And like you say, you've got people doing things on one side of the planet to benefit the others. But I mean, how do you see this impacting London? I guess with opportunities in the future, because I mean, obviously, what we're going to see I mean, the sad side of what we're going to, obviously, aside from everything that's happened on a human level, we're going to see an economic downturn like we've probably never seen. I think it's going to make probably 2008 look reasonably, a short dip, given the amount of sort of downward spirals that we're going to kind of see. I mean, there's going to be opportunities in this, though, isn't there? How do you see those opportunities playing out in the city?
Yeah, and I just before I kind of answer that, it's just worth stressing. We're very, very aware that it's hard out there. It's people got into resilience mode. We're helping in that respect and trying to kind of convene discussions and trying to help and provide some sort of intel and content and clarity as to what's out there in terms of support. But yeah, I mean, I just read somewhere recently that the World Trade Organization, from a global perspective, is expecting a shrink of trade or anything between 13 and 32%, and it could be more, right? So, and that's significant, and that's important because that significantly hits the capital like London.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, I think there is opportunity. Depends on people's mindsets and depends on how people utilize this time. I was listening to your colleague Benjamin yesterday talking about how companies should use this opportunity to kind of digitize that customer journey if they haven't already. I think these are the times and opportunities to kind of really double down on your products and iterate it if it's manual, particularly large corporates. And the large corporates have, I think some of them have been found wanting, and hopefully there's a silver lining there where there's some lessons learned, because they wouldn't want to go through this situation again, particularly if they have the gift to be able to digitize and streamline some of their back office functionality. But I think fundamentals of London haven't changed, and I don't think they'll change. I mean, just simply from a fintech perspective, I think we track a quarter of Londoners use more than one fintech product. I suspect that's probably gone up during lockdown. 2.11 billion pound, $2.11 billion, in fact, we invested in fintechs last year. A large proportion of that was coming from overseas, particularly from the US. 250 banks, foreign banks, headquartered here in London. 150,000 people working in financial services and 44,000 people working in fintech. On the jobs front, yes, there'll be some moving around, and sadly, some people will lose their jobs. But I think those fundamentals will not change. So as we are in resilience mode, I think phase 2 will be recovery mode. When that will happen is anyone's guess, but we will recover. London's always recovered from setbacks, and I think and I hope this is no different.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there will be opportunities. To your point, there will be an element of resilience here. I mean, I'm going to start making this sound like a Churchill speech. I don't mean to. The incumbents. I mean, every 11FS, we work across a lot of big incumbent organizations, and actually never do I come across an organization where I just think they just don't get it. There's pools and patches of people within that organization. Sometimes very senior people within those organizations get it and get what should be done. And actually, I mean, the thinnest of silver linings that's happening with COVID-19 is that actually the aspirations that they have from a digital perspective are no longer just being that side opportunity or an investment that they can't figure out the ROI for, because fundamentally the internet and digital has changed everything that actually that organization is. And if they'd done all of those things and got to that place now, they would be in a much better chance of really sort of weathering this storm. So I think there are a lot of even CEOs of banks that will use this as a real catalyst for major reform within their organizations. And that, for me, I think leads to the next 5 years of banking probably being most of the interesting stuff that's happened in the last 20 to 25 years, really. So it's going to be fascinating to sort of see. I mean, there's lots that's still happening, isn't there, though, Dhaval, over this period? It's not like it's difficult because we're in both from a personal and a professional perspective. Personally, we're all in the same boat, or at least not in the same boat, because that would convene social distancing, wouldn't it? So we're all in our own boat. But the boats are very much kind of at home right now. Being in a situation where we suddenly get released back into the city, I mean, do you think people are going to be cautious of travel and transportation, or do you think people will spring back to work pretty quickly?
No, I mean it's a good question, and it's hard to judge. I mean, we've been reading a lot of reports recently. Government's been making suggestions that there could be a staggering of sectors, of peoples. I've been talking to colleagues around, those people who can work remotely. Will they be further down the rung in terms of being let out? Which to me sounds sensible. If you can be still productive in your operations and your job from home. So I think it's still open-ended. I think we work very, very closely from a London Partners perspective with the leisure and hospitality sector, which is going through quite a, dare I say, hugely challenging time right now, and the entire supply chain that works in that sector. And so we're kind of providing some support. They're trying to pivot into interesting areas, but still it's quite limited. So I think at the moment it's hard. What I find interesting, really, David, is the general discussions of what's going to happen next in the business world. There's been a lot of chat around the working from home, and could this be the new norm? I mean, I found an article that suggested, this is from Gartner, that a survey was done of chief financial officers. I think this was in the US. 74% of those suggested that they were looking to shift 5% of their on-site workforce to remote working permanently.
Wow.
So that's that kind of, I mean, whether there's a reality there or this is just chat at the moment, I think we should kind of keep an eye on as to what happens in that front, particularly when we've discovered that these tools that we're using, they work.
Yeah.
Productivity in many organizations haven't really dipped unless you're selling into sectors that have been severely affected.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the fallout of this is. From a positive perspective, like you say, but less trains and planes and cars on the road is a good thing for the world, let alone just the sort of individual's sanity. I mean, as somebody who lives in Norwich and commutes into London, then definitely a few less train trips sounds like a good upside of this to me. But London Partners are doing quite a bit over this period. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the Pay It Forward initiative? Because I kind of read this with real interest. There's some real amazing things that are kind of happening, again, using the mayor's capability for distribution to shout about these things and get them out there. But do you want to talk a little bit more about Pay It Forward?
Yeah, I mean, and Pay It Forward is an example of how a testament to my team in London Partners and the work that we do with GLA and City Hall and the Mayor's team is how quickly we can mobilise and I think get it right. And this is one example of many over the years where we've been hit by an awful event and come out and kind of, in many ways, it's an amplifier kind of effect, David. We did, the Save My Local is a similar scheme where we're using our leverage and our capabilities and our amplifying effect to be able to say to the small business community, hey, we're working with the tech community. This is what we've created. This is how we're trying to support the high street and the small business community. And this is how citizens can help support their local firms, particularly those that they are hugely fond of. So I think, and it seems to have got a lot of traction, a lot of good responses. I've not seen the numbers recently, but I think a lot of companies have signed up to it and are kind of using it to effectively, and I hope, use it as a way to kind of tide themselves over until we get back to some sort of normal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's initiatives like that can just bridge the gaps between where we are now and just even a fraction of stability over this period is really, really important. A few comments on the over on LinkedIn. Adrian says, "Is that Admiral Akbar on your desk?" Yes, it is Admiral Akbar on my desk. I'm always looking for those traps, Adrian. So Janet then said far more eloquently than I did. We're all in we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. Apparently, that's by Damien Barr. So, Janet, that's way smarter than what I said. And there's some interesting sort of comments here around what you see sort of going forward. So, comment here from Dan for you, Dhaval. What are some of the fintech bridges going to look like after everything that's happening with COVID? I mean, beyond EU and US. And I know, obviously, Dhaval, you guys set up lots of trade missions, different connections with places like Berlin, India, much further overseas. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, and actually the program that you set up for organizations to take part in those as well?
Yeah, I'll start I'll go in reverse. I mean, the Mayor's International Business Program, which 11FS is a member of now, is a program that started 5 years ago. It's in its very simplistic form. It's a way to it's contributing to London technology companies that have got to a certain size or business cycle to help with their international plans and for them to be exposed to markets that they are targeting. And off the back of that, what that really means is we run a whole host of events and activities, both here domestically, but also we literally take groups of companies to overseas markets, which is commonly called trade missions. We do about 13 of these trade missions a year. Obviously,
Wow.
not this year, hence the virtual bit. 13 trade missions, which is no mean feat. I mean, each individual trade mission is quite an undertaking. And then we'll take groups of companies. I've taken groups of companies to India, to Canada last October. I had one planned for Australia in March, which unfortunately we had to pull. And going back to the fintech bridge, the fintech bridge with Australia and UK was going to play a big part in the sort of the narrative and the discussions when we got over down under. And we'll plan to meet up with ASIC, the regulator, and various other kind of advisors to understand how best to utilize that for some of the companies that we were bringing over. But yeah, the international flavor and the international links that we have across the world. It's also worth kind of stressing we have teams across the world as well, in North America, France, Germany, India, and China. And these are locals that with some amazing business connections. You mentioned Silicon Alley in Berlin. Yeah, that's a one-year partnership we call the Bridge. It's a content and events series where we're looking to champion our respective startup communities and looking to kind of really ramp up the amount of content and facilitate connections amongst our ecosystem and theirs. Again, I was planning a fintech trade mission in May that 11FS were kindly supporting as well. But we'll look to virtualize that in some fashion, and hopefully next year we'll get to go over in person.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean the fintechs that we have in London right now are at a scale where, I mean, global expansion is definitely on the agenda for anybody who's being successful within this ecosystem. So there's a really interesting dynamic there of sort of exports of expertise and thinking, and then actually, as you guys do, working with organizations to set up in those places. Because I mean, in business, a major part of all of that is always having the right connections to put these things together to really get that good start, isn't it? So, I mean, talk about a few of the organizations that have been on this program, because I mean, we're part of it now with 11FS, but actually there's been some pretty impressive companies come through the scheme, haven't there?
Yeah, there have been. I mean, this is before my time, but the likes of Revolut and Monzo, I believe Starling as well, have come through the program and have benefited hugely, and are continue to be part of the network and are hugely supportive particularly when we go to jurisdictions where they've just set up an office and switched an office. Revolut being a good example, where we met the Revolut team in Toronto, who kind of gave us the lay of the land from their perspective and what it means to set up and grow their office in that market. But yeah, I mean, even now, I mean, companies that we were looking to take over to Australia were like Bud Financial, Thought Machine, an interesting company called Abaca, Credit Enable is doing some great work in India. So yeah, I mean, and obviously now you guys, I mean, so we've got a really good community. I mean, and then it's also not just sort of an opportunity for them to explore new markets through our vehicle, which is great, and we're happy to support. But it also acts as a bit of a convener. When we go overseas, we are also showcasing the best that London has to offer. Right? So each individual company will have their own motivations for that market, but we also stress, hey folks, support each other. We're there as one. We're there as one group, and be proud of that, because we've come from London, and these companies and corporates really want to hear what we've got to say.
Yeah. It sounds like a fintech reality TV show. These tours, like I think some behind the scenes footage would be amazing. It's like fintech goes on tour. I think I'd watch that show for sure. You know what I mean? But I think like say during this period where people are really sort of pulling together, and the context of end consumers' problems are dramatically changing, then actually, again, having that ability to create those bridges is more important than ever, that we all sort of pull together. I mean, how are you finding during this period keeping that connectivity? Because there's obviously the fintechs you work with, but there's the different jurisdictions, regulators, or business connections. Are you sort of living the virtual life now in terms of keeping all of that connectivity going?
Yeah, we couldn't be born busier. I mean, it's remarkable, and I can't move for a webinar. Quite frankly, the world's gone webinar mad. Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult, right? It's because every country and regulator, government agency is going through their own challenges, and each country is going through their own stages in terms of responding to COVID-19. So that makes it more challenging. But the underlying desire and appetite to stay connected remains, and that's hugely important for us and others, and hence the reason why we are exploring this idea of virtual trade missions, which sounds a bit left field, but we think the reason why we're looking to do it is because the people in America, people in Canada and Australia, they said, right, this has happened, and boy, we don't know what's going to happen next, but we still want to stay connected with you guys. We still want to know what you are offering, particularly around digital and B2B enterprise solutions, and that's the big play, I think. It's never not been a big play, but I think from an accelerated catalyzing point of view, I think coming out of this, as we said before, a lot of particularly large corporates will be scrambling around looking for ways to address issues that have been exposed during this situation.
Yeah, I agree. And like I say, there's lots of problems out there that organizations need to be able to solve. I mean, arguably, we've said it a few times on the show before, but arguably fintech was born out of the crisis that happened in 2008. And actually, I think there'll be many great organizations that come to the front to try and solve real problems that we have right now. I mean, a comment here from James Brown. I presume it's not the James Brown, because that would be amazing right now. Been dead for at least 8 years. So if that's the case, then I'd be very surprised if he's tuning into this show. But I completely agree with him. The point that he's making is that GFIN, global standards, the Mayor's Office, the work that the FCA are doing, the work that the Bank of England are doing, you guys as a collective flying the flag for everything that's happening in the UK and London very standard for the planet, which is a great thing for us to do, but doing it in a way that actually enables everybody to move forwards as well. So keep up the great work, Dhaval. It's great to see you guys kind of keep flying that flag, even if you're flying it virtually right now. So I'm afraid we're probably coming to the top of the hour, so we probably better wrap up and let these people go and get on with the day. James A. Brown has confirmed no relation to the James Brown, unfortunately, but Mr. Brown, we'll have to see your dance skills if you just to prove that one if you can. All right, folks, coming to the top of the hour, so we better let everybody go. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Dhaval. Where can people learn a little bit more about what you and the great people at London Partners are doing?
We have a website, londonandpartners.com, or go2grow.london, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, Dhaval Gore 1.
Fantastic. All right, guys, all we have for you today. Tomorrow we'll be back with Jane and Gardia, who is formerly the CEO of Virgin Money, CEO at Salesforce, and now founder and executive chair at a really, really interesting company called Snoop. I particularly like Snoop because they're based in Norwich, and I'm biased. What can I say? All right, guys, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.